In this video, we're going to talk about how to handle an opposing side's argument by creating a counterargument and counterpoints to deal with that counterargument. So what is a counterargument? It's an argument or set of reasons that oppose someone's argument. And as an example, we're going to look at the idea of having a federal public smoking ban. And there's going to be one side that would be for that federal ban and one side that would be against it. And they would be making different points trying to convince the reader or the audience to agree with them. So for example, if you were for a federal smoking ban, you might identify the dangers of smoking, dangers of secondhand smoke, why we shouldn't cater to smokers who are now in the minority, how we should use alternative smokeless nicotine options when we're in public, and that location bans reduce cigarette use by smokers. And the opposing side might want to say things like having a federal smoking ban unnecessarily expands federal powers, or it treads on state rights, or it treads on individuals' rights, or that the location ban doesn't necessarily reduce cigarette use or fix addiction issues. So in an argumentative paper, you want to create your argument for your side, but also address the opposing side. And you can acknowledge them and figure out how to deal with them through developing a counter argument for them and creating counterpoints. And the reasons why this is so important is that it allows you to know the issue well enough that you can know what the opposing side would say. You have thought about the opposing side and how they would object or respond to your claims. You're providing a framework for acknowledging the opposing side's claims and mitigating them if not accurate, reasonable, or applicable. And you can preemptively deal with the opposing side's strong claims and effective attacks on your own claims. So how do you use a counterargument? Well, first of all, you need to identify the opposing side's claims, and usually this does require research because most people don't effectively know the opposing side's arguments just because they're familiar with their own side's arguments. And you'll need to provide appropriate, fair evidence that supports and develops their claim. And that could include research findings, survey results, interview experiment results, case studies, statistics, facts, representative examples, historical precedent, expert testimony, so on. And then you need to respond with a counterpoint. And you're going to be able to refute, resolve, or concede. And then you should provide evidence to support whichever approach you choose when dealing with the opposing side. And that again can include research findings, all of the above, plus you can also try to identify logical fallacies or errors in their reasoning, or explain why they have some kind of misunderstanding, there's a weakness in their argument, lack of knowledge, lack of applicability. And you can do this all in a couple sentences, you could do it in a paragraph, or you could choose to take multiple paragraphs to develop the counterargument and employ a counterpoint. So you can choose to refute the opposing side's claim, so demonstrate the objection is based in incorrect information or a misunderstanding, or that the claim doesn't damage your argument because it's flawed reasoning or irrelevant. Or you can choose to resolve the issue, find some middle ground by showing that both sides are partially correct and partially incorrect, or proposing a solution that both sides would agree with. Or you can choose to concede, which is where you acknowledge the legitimate objections and reasonable claims against your argument. And so obviously having no counterpoint addressed is the weakest option. Then conceding, resolving is in the middle, and then refuting is generally considered the strongest approach for employing counterpoints. So to refute, you're looking at the strongest, most commonly used approach for dealing with the counterargument, and you can show the opposing side's claim is based on incorrect information, identify those logical fallacies or errors in reasoning, explain the misunderstanding, weakness, lack of knowledge, lack of applicability. And there are different ways you can try to introduce the refutation. So after you have established their counter-argument, you could use phrases like, as it happens, nevertheless, this argument, however, but experience and evidence show, still in spite of their good intentions. If you're choosing to resolve, you are looking at the most difficult approach because you generally can't make everyone happy, otherwise usually there wouldn't be opposing sides to the argument. And the method would be you could show both sides are partially correct, or you could propose a solution where both sides would be happy. And again, difficult to find that middle ground. Ways to introduce the resolution after you've established the counterargument would be to say phrases like, while both sides of the issue are partially correct, or while source A is correct that X, source B makes the accurate observation that, or both authors agree that, and so on. Or you can choose to concede, which is the easiest and weakest approach. If you admit the opposing side has a good point that you can't refute or resolve, you are more likely to be viewed as reasonable by supporters of both sides of the issue. However, you cannot concede every point. And the method would be admit they have a good point and move on. Ways to introduce that: concession after a counter-argument has been established. You could use phrasing like, it is true that, another argument, it has been argued that, this argument is plausible, one common complaint is. And here we have some counterpoints in action for an argument around animal rights. So let's say somebody is arguing for animal rights. They may make the claim that some animal species clearly exhibit traits that afford humans rights, like intelligence, awareness, and emotion, so we should give animals the same rights as humans. And the opposing side might have a claim, a counter-argument, that giving some animal species protection on the basis that they are cute or more intelligent than other species attributes human qualities to non-humans, which is unscientific. And if you want to refute that claim, you could say something like, science cannot currently measure the intelligence, awareness, and emotions of animals. However, many animals have demonstrated awareness of themselves, chimpanzees, emotional intelligence, dogs, and the ability to predict future outcomes, dogs and horses. An example of resolving a claim, same argument, someone who's for animal rights might say, we should not allow medical and commercial testing on animals because the subjects are often kept in horrible conditions and experience unnecessary daily abuse. The opposing side might be represented with a counter-argument, like not allowing medical and commercial testing on animals will stunt scientific and economic advancement, forcing humans to be test subjects or companies to produce unsafe products. And that is a major concern, so maybe rather than trying to refute, it would be better to resolve this claim. So a resolution could be, while medical and commercial testing on animals is important to scientific advancement, the circumstances under which testing is done should be strictly monitored to prevent unnecessary animal abuse. And then an example of conceding a claim: if you're for animal rights, you might say humans can survive on a vegetarian diet, so we should avoid eating meat to reduce the pain and suffering of animals. The opposing side might have a counter-argument like, humans have eaten meat since the evolution of our species, and the vegetarian diet is often unhealthy because strict followers don't receive needed vitamins and minerals. A concession could be, becoming vegetarian is a lifestyle choice that should be encouraged but not forced on humans. And we have that developed into paragraphs here. So we start off with an argumentative claim that we would make in our argument paper, and it's underlined as the first sentence here. It is our responsibility as humans to fight against animal experimentation as a simple matter of moral duty. Harm not, lest ye be harmed. And then we move into our first piece of evidence here. In Animal Rights, Human Wrongs, Tom Regan states that we can't justify intentionally harming or killing a human being. Neither can we do so even in the case of so lowly a creature as a laboratory rat. And then we move into explanation. Our society accepts that by nature animals lack the same motor skills and brain power that humans are born with. And our second piece of evidence here, instead of making animals susceptible to human research, this justifies the idea that it is man's duty to know his knowledge for the welfare of animals. Quoted from Singer, 2009. Statistics prove, however, that even with our advanced technological capabilities, facilities are testing on animals in a variety of painful and unnecessary ways, not because the facilities need to, but because they do not grant animals any rights. And then tying it up with some explanation and context. This is a complete failing of our moral obligation to protect animals who cannot protect themselves. The lack of oversight in such facilities only fuels the amount and acceptance of unnecessary animal abuse in testing situations, which is often justified by proponents of testing with the claim that it is better to test on animals than humans. In the following paragraph, we're going to see the counter argument addressed and then the counterpoint made, which is a resolution here. So the counter argument. Many scientists and philosophers believe that animals should not be given any special rights because human moral judgments have less scientific validity than the traditional concept of the food chain. They feel that if animals aren't capable of protecting themselves, why should humans feel responsible for protecting them? Moving on to a piece of evidence to support that side. Tom Rose argues in Proud to be Speciesist that animals should be at our disposal for medical testing when necessary, that we would choose human life over that of a rabbit's every time. Facilities testing medication, treatments, and procedures on animals save human life to the degree that stopping or even reducing animal testing would stall the progress of the medical field. The counterpoint here, going into resolution. However, there are currently less than reputable facilities performing unnecessary and abusive testing on animals, not because it is in the best interest of patients in the medical field, but because the abusive and usually deadly testing is cheaper, quicker, and easier. Humans need to create and support organizations and watchdog groups that will protect the interests of animals in such situations, but not limit the necessary testing and advances of the medical field. So the resolution is saying, yes, these are necessary advancements that we need, but we can do this testing in a better way.